So good afternoon, everybody. My apologies for the delay, just a little bit of a glitch here. The first disclaimer, the content of this talk is independent. It is not sponsored. I'm against violence for doctors, which is very rampant. So let's start. So why should we even bother to talk about sleep? We get enough sleep, right? That's what we think. So the actually in reality, these are the publications in recent newspapers. One is in India Today, and um, the other one in another gadgets.com. Basically, what it says that is that in a Fitbit study of about 18 countries, Indians are least active and second most sleep deprived people in the world, or at least among the 18 participants, 18 countries that they analyzed. In another publication in Taiwan, this small graph over here, the x-axis is GDP per person and the y-axis is more sleep. India is somewhere here, which is about 6 hours and 45 minutes of sleep and low on GDP. So if you look at places like Singapore, they have high GDP, but again, poor sleep when compared to other places like Luxembourg. Okay, so we're not getting enough sleep. So what's the big deal? The big deal is this one. This is a meta-analysis done sometime. This was done in 2017 from JAMA, and in this study, what they saw was they went through, it's a meta-analysis, and they had about 57 all-cause mortality, total cardiovascular disease, about 37 papers, coronary heart disease, 27 papers, and stroke, 20 papers, and what they actually came out with are these graphs, which is fantastic because this is all-cause mortality, which shows a kind of a U. Almost all of them have a U curve, and they all kind of merge around 7 hours. If you look at this is total cardiovascular disease, it is coronary heart disease and stroke. So around 7 hours, they kind of lower and they all kind of merge around there. So, which is very interesting because that might be an indication of something that we should be looking at. If you look at, so this paper, the doctors say that in this meta-analysis, approximately 7 hours of sleep duration may actually help in all-cause mortality, cardiovascular events, and the lowest risk of sleep duration. We also know that the immune system is very directly related to the amount of sleep, and sleep deprivation, which is a big problem, it's insomnia, but sleep deprivation is one deprives oneself of sleep because of many reasons like work or family challenges or whatever. So we know that when you have immune consequences, the immune consequences of sleep deprivation is basically an increase in inflammatory cytokines, which affect the entire system by working on even the T helper cells, the NK cells. So if you look at the challenge that we have as in COVID today, it also causes a reduction in antibody levels as well as antigen presenting cells, increase in inflammatory mediators, increase in cancers, infection, neurodegeneration, as well as cardiovascular disease. And this is quite big because it certainly shows that sleep deprivation does cause all these challenges. So if in the same paper, they've looked at all different kinds of studies that were done for people with sleep deprivation and how it ends up with the immune system and the cells of the immune system being dearranged, and putting them back to a regular sleep pattern does help in a certain way. This is another paper which shows that the markers of systemic inflammation all keep changing and increase if there is a total sleep deprivation or changes of sleep patterns. The same here. Now, we also know that infections can be a challenge. We know that a short duration of sleep can cause challenges and common infections such as cold, flu, gastroenteritis, and other infectious diseases. Patients with sleep disorders show a 1.23-fold greater risk of herpes zoster and even sepsis-induced multi-organ failure. So infection is a challenge when it comes to sleep deprivation. Sleep deprivation also causes post-vaccination challenges, which is very apt for now because everybody is being vaccinated. And if one doesn't get enough sleep, then it becomes a challenge. So we know that hepatitis B, for example, has a challenge. Vaccination post hepatitis B has a challenge when it comes to lowered sleep hours. We know that the sleep supports and sleep deprivation impedes the formation of immunological memory. So basically, the cells of the immune system do get depressed when we don't have enough sleep, which is exactly what we should be doing right now when we're fighting this COVID challenge. The memory can be divided into three processes. For example, the immune memory is uptake of information, transfer for a long-term storage, and then retrieval of the stored memory for post-infection or another attack of another infection. So basically, slow wave sleep is important, and we'll just touch upon slow wave sleep there, where you have in antigenic transfer into T cells and B memory cells, which are required for infection, for making antibodies upon reinfection. We know that sleep deprivation can also cause challenge with the cancer, typically breast, colorectal, and prostate cancers. And one of the potential mechanisms is the probable challenges with the secretion of melatonin. We know that melatonin is secreted at night when there is no light on the retina, because the retina is the receptor for light, especially when it comes to melatonin release. And melatonin has a lot of properties, including anti-cancer properties, which is very, very central and essential. We are also looking at cancer and the disturbance of sleep as a symptom for cancer development. So if you look at the old perspective, it's a very straightforward diagnosis, cancer treatment, insomnia, and fatigue. But the new dialogue is a little different, where we're looking at cancer initiation, changes in the body, which causes chronic insomnia and cancer detection. So sleep, long sleep challenges can also probably point towards a cancerous challenge. We know that neurodegenerative diseases are becoming a challenge, especially because of neuroinflammation. Neuroinflammation is a big terminology being used now for anti-aging or aging challenges. We know that the plaque formation is typical of Alzheimer's disease, and we also know that Alzheimer's disease and plaque formation, during sleep, we have studies which show that the CSF actually washes away most of the toxins, including amyloid particles, and plaque formation is reduced. So sleep deprivation becomes a challenge even for these neurodegenerative diseases. Autoimmune diseases are also challenging: rheumatoid arthritis, ankylosing spondylitis, SLE, and systemic sclerosis. What about metabolic vascular disease? There's a 48% increase in coronary heart disease, 15% high risk of stroke, and a 12% increase in all-cause mortality, like we saw before. And these are numbers to those. So basically, sleep deprivation is central to many of the challenges that we face today. Not the acute challenges, most of the chronic challenges. We know that sleep and obesity are linked. We know that sleep and insulin resistance becomes a challenge. Insulin resistance is a basic challenge, or the underflowing current that happens in most metabolic challenges, including diabetes. Diabetes or the sugar challenges is only a tip of the iceberg. Insulin resistance starts much before that. Hypertension also is one of the challenges that you have with sleep deprivation. So if you look at we also know, or if you look at sleep deprivation and COVID-19 healthcare workers, we should be talking more about how to give rest to our healthcare workers. So we must be aware of the important effects of insomnia on the immune system of these professionals, and make sure that they get enough sleep, because if that doesn't happen, we see repeated infections of our doctors in the front line. And this could be one of the challenges, because you hardly sleep if you're in duty. So reinfections with a high viral load around can be a big problem. This is an interesting study called the S-code study, which is ongoing. So basically, they're looking at the hypothesis that the presence of recent night shifts and limited mistimed sleep in shift workers will show a lower level of antibody response to COVID-19 vaccination compared to day workers. So basically, they have designed this study over a period of time, when they give 2 vaccine doses and then look for the response. So the primary objective is to investigate the immunological immune response to COVID-19 vaccination in shift workers. And the secondary objective is to determine the long-term anti-SARS-CoV-2 immune responses over time over both shift workers and daycare workers. Now, sorry, next one. So, understanding sleep physiology is central, of course. So we talked about what sleep deprivation or challenges with sleep can cause. So what is sleep exactly? Now, before we get into sleep, I'd just like to take you through a couple of rhythms which we are all a part of. And these rhythms are ubiquitous. So they're not just designed for humans, but pretty much all living organisms on this planet. And these rhythms, we follow rhythms. So there are three rhythms which are easy to follow and understand. One is called the ultradian, then it's called a circadian, and third is infradian. Ultradian rhythms are very short rhythms, like cellular division of human or human REM, rapid eye movement sleep, are all come under ultradian rhythmicity. And then we have this circadian rhythm. Circadian rhythm is basically a 24-hour rhythm plus or minus 30 minutes. And this is pretty much very central to what we're talking about. And circadian rhythm is where rest, activity, melatonin, cortisol, heart rate, blood pressure, everything is linked to the circadian rhythm. So we have to look into circadian rhythm before we even talk about sleep. And then, of course, you have the infradian rhythm. The infradian rhythm. The infradian rhythm is a long-term period of more than 24 hours, which range from days to weeks and months or even years. For example, the human menstrual cycle or hibernation. So these three rhythms actually govern life on our planet. So looking at the circadian rhythm, which is important, this is just a cartoon. It is not exactly accurate in all these different claims, but it's just to impress upon you all that over time, from midnight to the next night, there are a lot of the time that we go through the day affects different types of biological activities, including blood pressure, allergic rhinitis, and so on. And so keeping this circadian rhythm is very central, should be very central to our practice, because even giving medication depends on the circadian rhythm or circadian cycle. We are light beings. In other words, we have evolved under the sun. And so we are used to the light and no light. So basically we run our circadian 24-hour rhythm runs under light and no light, which is so central to sleep and sleep disorders. The light basically that affects us can be sunlight, which is about 100,000 lux. 1 lux is about the light that follows international candle, and 1 meter from that, how much light it emits is 1 lux. And so typical bright daylight is about 100,000 lux. And over time, we go through different phases of the day when we go through different light variations through light. Now, it is very important that these light rhythms are followed, and we have actually taken ourselves to a challenge because our light rhythms are totally out of whack. So when we're looking at these sleep and wake cycles, again, melatonin is very central, as I mentioned some time back. And melatonin through the night. Melatonin helps with regular sleep, and it maintains the body temperature, and it facilitates deep sleep. So release of melatonin is very, very central. So during the day, we have cortisol, which peaks up around just before the sun hits our eyelids. And that peaks through the day and then starts dropping towards the evening. And when it starts dropping to the evening, melatonin takes over. Peak melatonin is around 1 o'clock, 12 o'clock to 2 o'clock, around 1 o'clock or 2 o'clock. But the release of melatonin when light starts dropping starts during sunset. So we have been designed for that for millions of years. But what's happening today is that we have stretched our light cycles. So by stretching our light cycles, we are literally painting ourselves to the corner. Today, our light cycles go until about 1 o'clock at night. People sleep so late, and COVID times have really pushed people to sleeping late and in arrhythmic when it comes to light and no light cycles. And that this is a big challenge that we need to address. So if you look at this cycle, we're looking at melatonin that starts around the evening actually, and then it peaks around 11 o'clock, and this is a good time to sleep, which all depends on melatonin. Now, if you look at the circadian rhythm, we know that imbalance in circadian rhythm can cause adipose tissue activity. We have two types of adipose tissue. One is brown adipose tissue and white adipose tissue. Brown adipose tissue is very thermogenic. So more brown adipose tissue you have, the more we can burn energy and maintain weight. Why children have more brown adipose tissue, newborns. We lose our brown adipose tissue as we age. And but when we break our normal cycle, normal day length or light and no light cycles, the prolonged day or light cycles actually cause a challenge in our brains, because the SCN, the suprachiasmatic nucleus, which is the central part of where light and no light really plays on, will work on various receptors and work on the beta adrenergic receptors, causing a change in AMPK and CRER. And these cause a change in brown adipose tissue. And the imbalance in brown and white adipose tissue can actually lead to obesity. We also know that, so same thing. And we also know that circadian rhythm can cause cardiovascular disease, just as we looked at the sleep deprivation. We know things like tumor necrosis factor, interleukin-6 can increase by between 3 and 29%. And in this paper, they demonstrate that circadian rhythm misalignments can increase blood pressure and inflammatory markers as well. So what they did was they took a bunch of people and they put them on a circadian misalignment protocol, which means that this dark cycle, this dark number patches here are when there's no light or zero lux, and then 450 lux is when you have light enough to stimulate the brain thinking that we are daylight. Now, 450 lux, what we recommend people to have in a room where you work is around 450 to 500 lux. So by putting people into this misalignment protocol and putting them into test periods 1, 2, and 3, and especially 1 and 3 in different timings, we see that the systolic blood pressure shifts. There's a shift in systolic. This red graph lines show systolic blood pressure or misalignment. So does diastolic blood pressure. Heart rate also changes. There's a change in IL-6. There's a change in CRP. There's a change in something called as restinin. Restinin is what is a hormone that is released by a cytokine or a hormone released by the brown adipose tissue, which we were talking about some time back. So a change in brown restinin can also cause obesity. TNF alpha also changes. So what is important, what I'm trying to convey here is that it's not just shift workers. Shift workers are basically a model, but it is us. We sleep late. I try my best to sleep early, and I'll give you an idea of what I do later. But sleep is a natural recurring state of arousal of the brain and body, which is behaviorally characterized by altered consciousness, decreased responsive to stimuli, and the inhibition of voluntary movements. So if you look at sleep, there are basically two categories of sleep. One is the NREM, that is non-rapid eye movement sleep. Stages 1 to 3, the old category where 4, but 3 and 4 have been clubbed together, I believe. I'm not a sleep specialist, but just interested in sleep to improve lives of my patients. And then, of course, you have the REM sleep. So in NREM sleep, it is a lighter stage of sleep where initially what happens is the muscle tone keeps going out of whack. So you see people who are sleeping and they go into, the jerk, initial jerk, they're called hypnic jerks. And this is because we kind of lose our muscle tone a little bit here and there, and we get these jerks. And the typical characteristic is that when you wake up, you feel like you haven't slept. So you ask someone, was I sleeping? Because you actually fall asleep, but you do not know, because you're just getting into the initial earlier or lighter stage of NREM sleep. And the muscles are not inhibited, breathing slows down a bit, blood pressure and brain temperature reduce a bit. And basically, this is interesting. Some people suggest that this feeling of drifting or this hypnic jerks maybe was an evolutionary hangover from our ancestors not falling off trees when they're trying to sleep. Very interesting, but funny at the same time. So, and then we move on to NREM2, stage 2, which is characterized by something called as sleep spindles and K complexes. Now, these are complexes where the reticular endothelial system is trying to contact the brain, and the brain stem is trying to depress these signs, these what do you call it, these communication to keep us awake. So it's a fight between the brain trying to put us to sleep and our body and systems trying to keep us awake for their own reasons. So this lasts for about 20 minutes. There's further, slowing of heart rate, blood pressure decreases even further, and the brain starts to emit slower and larger brain waves. So these two first stages of sleep are together referred to as light sleep. Then, of course, we go into the deep NREM sleep. Now, this is the most restorative stages of sleep. It consists of delta waves, which are very slow waves on an EEG, electroencephalogram, and the awakenings or arousals are rare. It's difficult to wake up at this stage of sleep. It's literally, we may have to slap some people to wake them up at this sleep. And this stage of sleep you have sleep conditions like parasnomias, like sleepwalking that happen during this NREM 3 and 4 sleep or deep sleep. It is characterized by, it usually lasts for about 45 minutes. There are very slow brain waves. People sleep through most disturbances like noise and movements, and waking up during the sleep brings a high probability of feeling disoriented for a few minutes. So what is very important is, in at least the take-home message here, is that sleep, NREM3 sleep or deep sleep, is very essential because there are hormones like growth hormone being secreted in the deep sleep stage, which is very important for cellular rebuilding, repair, digestive and immune system regulation, which happens all during this sleep. So it is central, optimal. It is important to keep this part of sleep optimal. Then we get into REM sleep, or rapid eye movement sleep. It's a stage of sleep which is pretty much very similar to being awake, except that we don't have control on our eyes and movements and even muscles. So the brain waves that happen at this time are pretty much very similar to our wake cycle. The eyes are not constantly moving, like as the name suggests, rapid, but there is a constant, to and froing of the eyes. And they are related to visual images of dreams. So this is dream sleep, very important. And core muscles that run the heart continue to be paralyzed. No, except for the heart, of course. Other skeletal muscles continue to be paralyzed. And awakenings and arousals can actually occur more easily in REM, but if you get woken up during REM sleep, you feel oversleepy. Now, it is very interesting because REM sleep is basically the deepest and powerful, where deepest and powerful dreams occur, and it is typically, and REM sleeps get longer and longer as the nights go by. So it starts off with a short REM spurt and then keeps on changing over time and gets larger and larger. Now, what is interesting about REM sleep is that if you cut your sleep cycles or cut short your early morning sleep, where probably the REM is kind of peaked, and you wake yourself up, or you set up an alarm for an exam or to see a patient or for some other reason, what happened at this time is you're depriving your brain of sleep, or REM, okay, dream sleep. Now, if you keep doing this for a very long time, your brain will demand that sleep. And during the day, you will start daydreaming. And that's what daydreaming means, because your brain is actually demanding that sleep time and taking it over. So even though you're wide awake or whatever, you're not thinking properly, you're just dreaming. And that is why it's called daydreaming, because the brain tries to take over or take back that important REM sleep that it has missed. Now, the stages of sleep cycle. So we go through various stages of sleep cycle, and each sleep cycle of NREM and REM sleep is about 90 minutes. Okay, so we go through, say, about 7 hours, means about 4.5 to 5 cycles, about 5 cycles of these through sleep, and the NREM sleeps get larger and larger as we go along. So these cycles of sleep are very important. And I'm very interested, of course, in NREM sleep, but the third stage of sleep, that's deep sleep, because that's where repair takes place. So sleep can, of course, be measured in different ways. The EEGs and encephalograms, the oculogram, the myograms, because there is muscle movement, and of course we can look at different waves of different brain waves. The reason why I have this slide here is because sleep brain waves, when you're awake or sleeping, are of different types: alpha waves, delta waves, theta waves, beta waves, and gamma waves. What is interesting is there is a field of science called as sound therapy, which is very interesting to look into. And sound can help us get into different waves, or brain waves, and then help us recollect or improve our thought processes, improve memory, and so on. So it's very interesting to see these different waves of the brain that can be recorded and can be used probably through sound therapy. We don't do much of it, but interesting. So how much sleep do we need? There are lots of papers. So I chose this paper. Basically, depending on which the age group you belong to, whereas newborns need a lot more sleep than probably us here, which would be, we need about 7 to 9 hours of sleep. So 7 hours seems to be somewhere, there, somewhere in the middle, which we should be getting. Oversleeping is bad again. So this is how much time we need to sleep, and for me it's about 7 to 9 hours. Children, of course, need more sleep. So what about quality of sleep? We talk about sleep. So sleep is not one package. It's we go through different stages of sleep. So what about quality of sleep? So if you look at papers that have been published, there's this paper recently published in 2021, and they looked at what is more important: sleep for health, sleep quality or sleep quantity or quality, right? And interestingly, they say that we should pay more attention to obtaining sleep of good quality. Restlessness, no sleepiness, no need for more sleep, sufficient objectives, sleep depth, etc. Even though many studies are not haven't been done on in children and adolescents, but this sleep quality seems to be an important thing to do. So how do we measure sleep? Again, we need to, if we want to look into different challenges with sleep. If you look at sleep quality analysis, we know that older adults report poor quality sleep, but the prevalence is lower in healthy adults, right? So thus, sleep quality may be considered as an early marker of cognitive decay in midlife. Today, one of my schoolmates said, I remember one of my medical college mates said, I wish I can remember what time your lecture, your talk is. That's typical, probably no sleep quality. I should remind her sometime. Now, as we increase our population, our age population is increasing, right? Because we have increased the life expectancy. So we should be seeing a lot more of these sleep disturbances. Our light and no light cycles have changed. Therefore, it is predictable that sleep quality examination will become a major relevant analysis for medical diagnosis. And I think I would really like to support that. So if you look at the different ways of looking into sleep and the different studies, you can have sleep questionnaires, subjective or objective, or contact or contactless. You have sleep questionnaires like the Pittsburgh Sleep Index questionnaire is one of the quality of sleep in questionnaire is one of the most popular of the questionnaires. Then you have something called as actigraphs, which is very interesting. Of course, you have this lab-based EEGs and electromyographs and oculographs, but you can't do that at home. That's great for if you're doing a sleep study in a lab. But this actigraph has always interested me, because maybe I can look at actigraphs and how I can use that for my patients. So the challenge is that these actigraphs and the tools and the quality of these actigraphs need to be examined, and it's still an evolving science. So as I mentioned some time back, you have polysomnography, which is all the EOGs and EEGs, and they can be measured basically only lab-based or hospital-based. Actigraphy is where you have bedtimes and sleep times, so you wear a device on your arm or on your head or whatever. Most of them are on the arm, and they measure various activities, including movement, and they you extrapolate that data using an algorithm. Another interesting way of measuring sleep is sleep diaries, asking people to write every day a diary of how they sleep, what time they sleep, and I think it's a good idea to start with many patients. And then of course you have the sleep questionnaires, where you have the questionnaire like the Pittsburgh Sleep Index Quality. Now that has been validated into Hindi, so we could probably use this. This is a published paper. Please feel free to write to me anytime, and I'll all these data that I've been showing here are all published papers, and I have links to all of them. So if you're interested, just send me a link and I'll send you the paper. And so they have been translated and validated. And so the sleep quality index can be used to measure sleep in patients. What's also interesting is, so I said, okay, fine, you know what, let me look at what's available on the market, because I'm interested in what I can wear. And I can't use my telephone and stick it to the side of me. Maybe I can wear something in my forearm and use that for sleep. So I looked into these 28 different trackers in 2022, which are top trackers. And this is what they came up with. An interesting site called healthline.com. I said, oh, let me go and look at what is available. So you have different types of trackers, and they can be trackers that you put under your mat, which you can use if you're couples, especially this, or you have a smartwatch, a fitness tracker. So these are the various makes. And this one here is very interesting. I've been following this device for a very long time. It's called the Aura Ring. They're basically, I think, two Indians who started this company in the US. The Aura Ring is a wearable device, very, very nice, and sends information to your telephone via an app. It can be put on a sleep mode as well, like it can be put on a flight mode, and so it doesn't transmit, and you're not exposed to electromagnetic waves or whatever it emits. So this is also, and it's quite accurate when compared to most of the devices.
From Finland.
But quite expensive. It's about 300 US, I think. So these are the devices that are available. I haven't tried any of these devices with my patients as yet, but I will certainly try and use them, first me and then my patients, to see what kind of sleep they can get, and the algorithms that these sleep trackers can send to you, especially when we are doing telemedicine. What about medications? There are a huge list of medications. So of course, first you need to diagnose the challenge about insomnia or sleep challenges. If it is sleep deprivation, it's different. But if it's related to any other challenge that's causing sleep disease or challenges with sleep, that has to be diagnosed. And this is a paper recently published by the Journal of Clinical Sleep Medicine. The take-home message is the ultimate judgment regarding property of any specific care must be made by the clinician in light of the individual circumstances presented by the patient, available diagnostic tools, accessible treatment options, and resources. So it really depends on the physician to look into the challenges that their patients have, and then probably apply these sleep practical clinical practical guidelines. So they looked at in this they looked at 14 such drugs available that are linked to sleep. Here they are, 14 of them. Some of them have been approved by the one with the asterisks here have been approved by the FDA. The one with the double asterisks, for example, trazodone, and trazodone is basically off-label usage of sleep, and there are some which are over the counter. For example, dimenhydrinate, I think it's Benadryl, and then you have melatonin, tryptophan, and valerian. Valerian is a herb that's been used for sleep for a very, very long time. So depending on this, they had questions for patients and doctors, I think, and from that they've come up with a list of these 14, and they looked at different total time sleep latency, wake after sleep onset, which means that you sleep and wake up and sleep up and wake up several times, so that affects your sleep and quality of sleep. Quality of sleep is really a challenge here, because I don't think they really have measured it the way it should be measured, I feel. So this is a list. It's too much to talk about here, and way beyond my expertise. But there, I can send you the paper. Please let me know. And these are the various available. And what I'm interested in is the critical outcomes by indication. So if you look at the recommended this drugs that are recommended for sleep, treating sleep onset insomnia, I'm interested in quality of sleep, moderate to large. This is escopilone, escopiclone. And then we have Ramilton. Ramilton is a melatonin agonist. Quality of sleep doesn't show any. This is basically because I think this is designed so because melatonin is cheap, so pharma companies can make money. I'm also a part of pharma company, by the way. And then you have drugs like triazolam, which improve quality of sleep moderate. So this is a good paper which shows you kind of indicating where drugs can be used in what condition. This is for treating sleep onset insomnia, and then for treating sleep maintenance insomnia. So you have doxepin, you have very commonly used zolpidem, which also improves quality sleep moderately. And this is interesting again, where we have drugs that are not recommended for sleep, which include diphenhydramine, which is Benadryl, and of course valerian, which is herb. I don't think we like it, but I don't think it's a bad idea. Let's see what we have more papers on that. So this is all the suggestions. A bit too much to talk about today afternoon, but just to keep that in mind. So one of the important things during practice is something called a sleep hygiene. Sleep hygiene is extremely important. That is a dialogue that you have to have with your patients in order to make sure that these patients actually follow something that will help them sleep without medication, probably with medication as well. So what is sleep hygiene? See, what happens is, because what happens, we begin to experience deep difficulty in sleeping, and our thought processes and behaviors can result in development of an interrupted pattern of sleep. So what happens is poor sleep begets poor sleep, and so we get worried about not sleeping the next night, and that again disrupts the sleep, and then that goes in a cycle. So sometimes we need to break these worry cycles, and cycles that can probably impede proper sleeping. So sleep hygiene is a term used to describe good sleeping habits or good sleep habits. That is the things that you can do to give yourself the best chance of good, refreshing sleep. For example, establish a sleep routine so that the body knows when you're getting ready to sleep, and have a regular bedtime. It's, I think, very important. Having a shower. I do this. I have a shower generally pretty much every day, unless it's, I don't know, very rarely I don't have a shower before sleep, but it's a great way to feel fresh and give you good sleep. So establishing a routine is very, very important. Go to bed at the same time, get up at the same time. The brain can be trained. It is difficult initially, but your hypothalamus, your brain can be trained. So going to sleep at the same time, getting the light right, when think of nice things when sleeping if possible. 5 positive things that you've done that day. Do a relaxed breathing exercise. If you don't fall asleep, go somewhere. Don't go to a very bright lit place. Go and read some, or maybe read something with the right light, which something probably boring. Don't switch on any electronic device, because that bright screen is going to scream and tell your brain that it is daylight. And we need to be extremely careful with that. Don't eat a heavy meal, which is very important. Many people do eat a lot. Sleeping during the day is not necessarily a very good idea, I think. So sleep hygiene is important. Now, what I do is around 10:30, my sleeping area is dimmed. Okay, so that kind of sets the tone. I switch off my telephone. There's no way I'll read my telephone when I'm trying to sleep. And what I do, which might sound a little funny to you all, but this is what I do. I brush my third dog. I have 4 dogs. Okay, so I brush my third dog, and it's become a habit. She will remind me it's time to sleep. She'll just come and look at me and go like, "Hey, it's time to sleep. Brush me." So I brush her, and this has become a time. And then I talk to her, and I just fall asleep somewhere there. but this has become a routine, so that once I get into the rhythm, it's very easy to fall asleep. So by 10:30, 11, I am in bed, and by 11:15, 11:20, I'm fast asleep, and I probably wake up in the middle of the night. But of course, we uh, fresh most of the time. Now, what is also another important thing is the workplace, the light that you use, which is very important. As I mentioned some time back, bright, we are sun beings. We have lived under the sun. We live a lot in our caves these days that we call offices and homes, and we have artificial light that is hurting us quite a bit. And most of the new lights, that the LED lights, are actually hurting us because they emit a lot of bright light. For example, your telephone can emit something like 8 to 9K, K is kelvins. So a bright afternoon has something like, I think, 13K or 14K, a blue bright day. So your brain is being told that your receptors in your eyes are looking at the light that's coming through your telephone or an LED device or like a TV, and that's telling your brain, hey, it's still afternoon or late in the evening. And then we try to switch it off and go to sleep, and our brain saying, what's wrong with you? It is still afternoon, so why do you want to sleep? So there is this tussle and tug of war where we're trying to go to sleep. We want to sleep, probably because we probably have a headache or we're really fatigued at that time, but we can't get sleep because our device has told us we need to stay awake. And so it's important to have the sleep and the right light to help us work and to put us to sleep. The right light to help us work is something around 500 lux, a little bit more than that. That is very important because most of the workplaces are just terribly and poorly lit that you feel literally sleepy in workplaces. So you go into sleep cycles because of low light at work. So that is important again for employers to look into. Um, I can see some questions coming in. So sleep is the single most powerful thing that you can do to reset your brain and body health. Do follow this person, Dr. Matthew Walker. He's very, very, very interesting character and very knowledgeable, has published a lot of paper. And I think he has a few videos on LinkedIn. So do follow him and sleep well tonight. I think that's the end of my presentation. So we have questions. I'll try and answer the questions. Oh yeah, one of my friends from Finland says Aura is from Finland, and we need to probably look into that. One question by Dr. Tilika is, how safe is melatonin? Doc, it is pretty safe. If you look at all the papers that have been published on melatonin, pretty safe. I think it's probably one of the safest that we have when it comes to sleep, inducing sleep, or even managing. I prescribe a lot of melatonin. I have actually released melatonin as a product in one of the pharma companies that I helped set up some time back, called Lifetonin. So melatonin is pretty safe, and there are a lot of studies have been done on melatonin. So that might answer how is it to be taken to prevent jet lag. I think there it is to simulate light. So uh, jet lag has to be treated, if I'm not wrong, with light therapy and then probably melatonin. So that will help, because you light or bright light of about maybe 500, not 1,000 lux, you get these lamps that help you with that. So maybe if you're a frequent flyer, you can buy one of these lamps made by, I think Philips makes them. They also come with an alarm that can wake you up in the morning. So you set it up at night. Say, suppose you want to wake up at, say, 7 o'clock or 6 o'clock. The light slowly starts increasing around 3 or 4 o'clock, 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning, and little light goes into retina. So it kind of reduces or brings you into wakefulness. So that might also help. There's a question, any information about the effects of meditation? I have not gone into that, I'm so sorry. But yes, there are papers, I've seen them, but I've not brought that into this publication. But I am sure meditation will help, because they help you relax a lot, help you with, as I mentioned some time back, muscle relaxation is important. So definitely meditation will help. I don't meditate, but I do, many of my patients do, and I definitely encourage them to do that. Um, My friend Petri is also talking about omega-3 and olive oil mixture supplement for good sleep. I think usually that might help, Petri. Usually, even in Indian medicine, if you look at Indian traditional medicine, giving ghee at night, a tablespoon or 2 tablespoons of ghee, seems to help people with sleep. Maybe that fat also helps a lot. So yeah, so I think that may help, Petri. Um, then we have question chamomile tea. Yes, that also helps. There have been a few studies on chamomile tea. Chamomile tea also helps you keep your nerves soothed through the day. I recently prescribed that to my sister, who was a little edgy during COVID, because of course business is bad. So it helped her. Not drinking too much of it, but a little bit. What's the right dose of melatonin, Dr. Shalin? Um, the prescription dose that you get in regular prescription in India is 3 milligrams. When I was in Hong Kong, we had GNC used to make over-the-counter melatonin, which was 3, 6, and 9 milligrams. Now, so prescription, the primary indication, according to the prescription information for melatonin in India, for example,
Yeah.
Melocet, is...
Sir, we couldn't hear last two sentences. You are paused that time,
Oh,
and some network issue made.
okay. Can you hear me now? Hello?
Yeah. Your
Okay.
video was also paused there.
Okay, so what the prescription or the prescription medications in India are 3 milligrams. Melocet is one of the ones I normally prescribe. My old company, I had released Lifotonin. I'm not sure that's still there. So 3 milligrams is a typical usage. 10 milligrams is, and a lot of melatonin is available over the counter. You can go on Amazon and buy them, and some of them are 10 milligrams. Yes, quite a lot. But I don't think you need to start with 10 milligrams, Dr. Shalin. I think you should start on a lower dose and then titrate it to a higher dose if required. What I also like is for titration, if you have to do, I prefer liquid, and there are 1 or 2 companies that are available or that sell the product online now. Makes one from the US. It is available in Amazon India, and the advantage is that you can titrate it. And what I like about titration, and this is what I do with some patients, you see, we are designed for melatonin to increase when there is no light on the retina. But we are sitting under bright light through till about 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, or even longer than that. So I think the challenge is that we do not have this initial buildup of melatonin. So for some patients, what I do is give them an initial dose, like say a quarter tablet of Melocet for 3 milligrams of melatonin, so that slowly builds up the melatonin levels, and then have a full 3 milligrams or 3/4 of the tablet, say around half an hour or 3/4 of an hour before you intend to sleep. And that actually has helped many of my patients, surprisingly. And I just tried it out. There is also long, what you call as extended release melatonins, which I'm not available, I think, in India yet, at least on prescription, but may help. Dr. Darshana Charya talks about banana, milk, dry fruit half an hour before sleep. I'm sure they do induce, but having milk will, because milk has got D-tryptophan, and D-tryptophan helps in 5-hydroxytryptamine, if I'm not wrong. So 5-hydroxytryptamine is another medication that people use for sleep. 5-hydroxytryptamine also does get converted into melatonin eventually. So that may help, but I'm not sure about dry fruit. It's got a lot of sugar. Most of our dry fruit have sugar. It's just fruit that has been dried up, and most of the dry fruit that we buy in the market are extremely sweet. That means I feel that most of the fruit, because we are sugar centric, have been sweetened. So if you buy kismis or sultanas, they're extra sweet. I don't think those grapes were actually that sweet when they were non-dried or hydrated. So so that helps. Dry fruit contains omega-3 a bit, but not much, doc. So any other questions that I can answer?
Which has more omega-3 then?
The best omega-3 comes from good old fish and fish products. Okay, so
for vegetarians.
in vegetarians, algal source of EPA DHA. So EPA and DHA are the two omega-3s.
What is that? What is that?
Algal, from algae, green. Yeah. So algal DHA is one of the best, one of the sources for EPA and DHA, and it's vegan. So it's beyond vegetarian, because most of Indians are lacto-vegetarians. We have a milk product, so we've given it a green dot though, but it is from an animal. So it is, so we are lacto-vegetarians generally, luckily rather. So the omega-3 that you get from the algal source is what krill and fish have to make omega-3. So that is one of the best sources of omega-3. They are slowly coming into the market. And I think I recently saw a product of on a omega-3 algal source. Now, Doc, one thing I need to answer. There is something called as ALA. Okay, ALA is seen in flax seeds. Okay, ALA is a short chain omega-3. It is not a long chain EPA and DHA that we need. So so if you look at the advertisements for flaxseed or flaxseed oil, they say highest amount of omega-3 in that product, which is right, which is true, but it is not EPA or DHA. It is ALA, and ALA has to be elongated in the body to be converted into converted into EPA, and then longer to be converted into DHA. Now, the conversion of EPA to DHA or ALA to EPA or DHA is about 13% in women who are metabolically fantastic, young, metabolically active, 13%. In male, it's 5%. So the conversion of EPA of ALA to DHA or EPA is abysmal, in my opinion. So if you want to take good EPA and DHA, omega-3s, which will help. ALA also has medicinal properties. I'm not saying it doesn't, but DHA is required for the brain. EPA is a fantastic anti-inflammatory. So to get the best omega-3, you may have to go into algal DHA, which is a vegan source. Does that answer your question, Doc?
There is no natural food which contains the
vegetarian,
like or whatever.
Hardly any, Doc. Hardly any. See,
questions?
One important thing, Doc, is when it comes to omega-3, I think we can talk about it some other time, is that unless you measure something, you're not going to have the market for it, and patients are not going to believe it. And I don't believe it, right? It is like vitamin D. Until we had a lab test to measure vitamin D, we were not into vitamin D that much, because our textbooks and our medical schools and colleges taught us about vitamin D enough and deficiency, because we only looked at bone those days. But now what we're looking at is hypovitaminosis. The same with omega-3. So there are very important and interesting tests called as omega-3 indexes, which I think is slowly being available in India, coming into the market, which is very useful, and by which you can indicate or tell patients that, okay, you have to have omega-3. Any other questions I can answer?
Doctor, there are two to three things which I would like to talk on.
Yes.
You talked about the diurnal variations.
Yes.
Like suppose Akshay Kumar is sleeping from 9 to 4.
Right.
You are sleeping from 11 to 7 or the 10:30 to 6:30, right? Myself sleep not before 1 o'clock and get up at 8 o'clock, right? So do you think that long run these things can vary or the body adjusts?
I think the adjustment, I think, takes a lot more physiological processes, Doc. I think it will affect you. There is also some scientific evidence of the skin receptors, the skin being receptors or photoreceptors. So if sleeping during the day is very different from sleeping at night, unless you really go into and completely change into maybe a nocturnal person, that might help. For example, rats are nocturnal beings, and their melatonin is high during night, but melatonin is used for different purposes in those animals which are nocturnal. So answer to your question, if we go into in and out of these sleep, different types of sleep, I think your body is going to get confused, and I think neuroinflammation will increase and challenges, Doc. I would definitely wouldn't recommend it.
Yeah, sorry. The second question is like Gandhi and Modi. They sleep for 4 hours, right? But
Not good.
retrospectively, if we see, if they are not falling sick. So does that mean that there are beyond something which we can do by not only meditation, because I know all those things, but there are exceptions, you mean to say, or they have trained their body to the less sleep or the best sleep or the best health?
Um, the bottom line is, I don't think we should make no sleep a big deal. I think many of our bosses and people you work with, they all boast about, I don't sleep, I don't need sleep, I need 2 hours or 3 hours or 4 hours of sleep. Now, I think it's going to affect it. We know that sleep quality, maybe there are a few exceptions, Doc. I seriously
Yeah.
doubt it. Maybe a few exceptions. Maybe you see some of the our sages, for example, they go into different cycle. I think that is repeated physiological changes that people get into. But for people like you and me, and definitely not me, I think it's very difficult to get into these stages. And so sleep deprivation has become a huge challenge for us. Sleep deprivation is one of the biggest problems we are facing these days in terms of quality of work. So you might be able to function, but the quality of work quality of work really gets affected. Let me give you an example. There was a study, I forgot which country, not a study. So school for children would start at 8 o'clock in the morning, or something like that, 8 o'clock or 7 o'clock in the morning. And so what they did was they changed that 8 o'clock by, and they moved it down by 1 hour, either 9 o'clock or 10 o'clock. 1 hour it was moved down from the original plan. And believe me, Doc, the quality of the children studying, their test scores improved dramatically. The number of accidents of parents trying to drop children school early in the morning and sleep deprivation changed quite a lot. So I think that speaks for itself.
Yeah. Doctor, I think one more thing I would like to add, because nobody adds this point, is the root of the sleep, disturbance and all.
Mm.
I know my father who lived for 93 and a half. I know my family doctor, general practitioner MBBS from KEM, who lived for 100 years. They both were spiritual. They both exactly knew that we are born here to learn the life, right? And what they did, they used to wash their mind every day so nicely, which we never do. Emotions we never tackle. When we need when we are in the need of the medicines, maybe the omega-3 or melatonin or chamomile tea and all, basically we are not cleaning our mind. So I would like to take one mass hypnosis session, and when I take you all to your inner child, everybody, believe me, everybody cries that what have we done. We have never forgotten the school mate who hurt me when I was in fourth standard or third standard, till yesterday.
Right.
And that's what exactly we need to learn and teach each other. That if we do,
Certainly,
still
Doc.
we do before just going to sleep, I think we have done our job for not falling sick.
Right. I mean,
And I am
thank you.
also the proud son
Thank
of
you.
my father.
I hope
Yeah.
I hope I was clear. And there is a question from one doc, Dr. Shaila Ansari, saying flaxseed should be non-roasted for optimal levels. I am not sure many people have roasted, but roasting can be a challenge, because if you over roast them, it becomes a problem, because the volatile oils can get destroyed, I think. There's another question from Dr. Vadwani asking, do blue light filters on glasses help? Yes, doc, they do help. You get blue glass filters. Both, I bought my wife and daughter first thing blue glass filters, and I insist on. I can't stop them from watching TV or watching their telephones through the evening or night, because I have a different sleep cycle generally. But yes, it does help quite a bit. So these blue light glasses or blue filters vary in quality. The very expensive ones I think are better, but generally you get blue filters even for your telephones. Some of the telephones do come with a with a software which reduces the blue light emission as well. Some of the screens also do have come with software which change the pattern of the light emission from your computers as well. And I think you can get a free version of that, if I'm not wrong. I probably can send that over to you sometime. But I think the new LED devices do have a manipulation of blue light.
Doctor, there is one more question there.
Yes.
Walnut with
Yeah,
some tryptophan, somebody said.
Yeah, is walnut at night with milk good? Okay, for tryptophan, yes. So usually the walnut also does give you, it's a fantastic fat source, also does give you tryptophan as well as warm milk, because when you warm up milk, L-tryptophan, if I'm not wrong, correct me if I'm wrong, this is what I read long back, I think. L-tryptophan gets converted into D-tryptophan, and D-tryptophan in warm milk is what induces sleep, and that basically I think stimulates 5-hydroxytryptamine, 5-HT, which is a good sleep inducer. Also, yeah, Dr. Darshana Chedda does remind me, yes, by reducing the room temperature is definitely good. I think the optimal temperature, Dr. Darshana, I think is about 24 degrees or 23 to 25 degrees, if I'm not wrong. But low temperature, not freezing temperature, of course, but lower the temperature, somewhere maybe around 22, 23, is probably the best to get to help us sleep. Yes, so changing the room temperature, light, the light is very important, temperature is important. Making the room as conducive to sleep is what trains our brain, and we can train our brain. It's not that we cannot train our brain. It's just a question of pushing ourselves. So I shall.
Yeah, doctor, you are very great.
Close my session here.
So thorough.
And Dr. Desai, sometime next time, maybe we'll talk about something else more as interesting. This started off as a presentation for a group, and then I modified it for this. And I'm sure over time I'll have more information. We can have an update on sleep some other time.
Your knowledge is always, fruitful to us, at least me.
Yeah, and I forgot one more thing. Exercise is always a good thing for sleep. We know that. I didn't put the paper on, but exercise is one of the best things to induce sleep. Good exercise gives you good sleep. So I'll close my session today. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Everybody.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
And keep taking the sessions at least once in a month.
Okay.
Your study and your reading and all, those things we have not touched upon in the undergraduate or the postgraduate level.
Neither did I, Doc. But it's just interesting that you come across and you have patients who have sleep challenges. Almost every
with the
patient.
Love you teach. No, that matters. Sir.
No, Doc. I think the enthusiasm. I think all of us are interested in our patients and sleep. Some of my patients, they just wonder, why do I ask them about sleep? And I insist. First meeting, nothing much happens. It takes time to get to know your patient and for the patient to understand what you're trying to say. I think that's important.
So nice.
Okay,
so nice.
Thank you, Doc. Thank you.
Welcome, sir.
Have a good afternoon. Everybody.
Doing exercise, how many hours before sleep helps?
Doc, I think if I'm not wrong, optimal exercise is in the afternoon. Okay, but yeah, typically in the afternoon. But I think I'll typically in the afternoon, but I don't have time in the afternoon. But now maybe because I'm doing telemedicine, but I don't think our work and a lifestyle lets us do that. So evening is not a bad time. But again, Doc, we need to talk about sleep sometime. Because we need to talk about exercise sometime, because I insist so strongly that the way we are doing exercise is not right, because we are seeing so many recent episodes of people dying in a gym, which is just absolute over exercise. So there should be a fine line between exercise and sport, and I think we need to discuss it sometime.
Yes. Thank you.
Pleasure, Doc. Should we close?
Yeah, we can close. You changed my timing from morning to 3 to 5. Now I have to go now for the gym. Yeah. Right.
Okay, Doc. Thank you. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you very much.